at all these slave masters posing on your dollar.
As I sit here and begin to put my thoughts into words, I must confess something up front. While I may not believe in deities and do not practice religion, this journey is not meant to be an attack of either. Undoubtedly, I will voice my criticisms on how religion tries to answer this question of the meaning of life, but I'm not attacking religion specifically. I'm merely treating it as an answer just like any of the other ones that are posited. My intention in this exploration is to not make the world less religious, nor is it meant to attack any group for their beliefs. This is a philosophical dive into a very serious question, one that has deeply profound implications on the lives of every human being that walks this earth, and affects every living organism that co-inhabits it. What is the meaning of life? To be clear, I will try to answer a more concise question overall. Is there an objective meaning to the reality of life, and furthermore, the reality of human existence? Theists love to ask this question because they already have an answer for it. They think that without a supreme being or deity, that there would be no purpose or meaning to life, that we must have a set of objective truths and morality in order to navigate the complexities of the human existence. Many believe that there must be some sort of purpose in order to derive meaning from the world around them. Purpose sets them on a path that cannot be subjective. I guess this line of thinking correlates to the idea that every beginning must have an end. The problem with finding the purpose or the meaning of life is that we understand neither our beginning nor where we as human existence is headed. As far as anyone can predict, life does not really have a predefined or determined end. Of course, death itself, but that is only from the individual's point of view. What I mean is that scientists have not found the end goal of evolution. Evolution through natural selection influences the form and behavior of organisms. The goal being that each new organism has genetic information that may or may not improve the fitness or survivability of that particular organism. The successful parts are then transferred to the next generation, in which the process of improving an organism's fitness is continued imminently, as far as we can tell. Evolution just continues for eternity with no end goal that we know of. This cliffhanger leads us to theorize about all sorts of answers. Just about everything humans have knowledge of has some sort of end. There is a beginning and an end to everything, except for maybe the universe, which is still the subject of ongoing study. Because of this pattern of every beginning having an end, we as human beings like to apply this to other areas of life. Sometimes our ability to see patterns and prescribe them to other areas of life is beneficial. It helps us find what fruits are ripe enough to eat based upon colors, and other times it leads us to false conclusions, such as thinking that brain size in human beings is determinant of their intelligence. It was long theorized that because women had smaller heads, they had smaller brains and were less intelligent. This pattern recognition leads us to falsely assume that women could never be as intelligent as men could, which is demonstrably false. Alternatively, the study of physiognomy, in which people believe that one could inherit criminality based upon the observation of certain physical characteristics that were common in criminals, such as hawk-like noses or bloodshot eyes. It has since been debunked. Before we begin to tread any farther, I should address a very simple question. What is the meaning of meaning? I know this question sounds arbitrary, but the way we use words and prescribe meaning to them must be established. It is from these commonly understood concepts that we build an entire philosophy around. Therefore, it is imperative to define the central purpose of the question before we build upon it. According to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, life's meaning, and of significance, importance, or other synonyms, is not as clear-cut as the definition from the dictionary. Large portions of individuals define meaning as something that can indicate a positive final value that an individual's life can exhibit. The overall majority in this field want to know whether and how the existence of one person over time has meaning, a certain property that is desirable for its own sake. Beyond talking about meaning derivative from happiness or rightness, there is no consensus in this field. So how do I define meaning? I believe meaning is neutral, in a sense that it is subjective to the individual to keep the individual progressively moving towards an end or goal. Whether the meaning is good, bad, relatively speaking, or produces anything of value, meaning must cause the individual to move to a point in space and time that is different from where they started, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, or any other kind of change in the status of that individual. The reason for the process of change in the status of an individual is what constitutes meaning. Many philosophies try to give an answer to the meaning of life by defining life's purpose. From Ayn Rand's objectivism, religion's servitude of a higher power, or cynicism, in which the purpose of life is living a life of virtue in according to nature, they all attempt to rectify the finite time of the individual organism with that of the broader infinite universe. I must also point out that many of these philosophies only deal with human life and do not attempt to explain life in general. This is important because life in general would obviously have different priorities than an individual organism. For example, we can ask what the point of the universe is, and that answer would have nothing to do with what the point of human life is in general. However, the existence of life on Earth may have something to do with the universe's existence since it encompasses human life. I'm not stating this as a fact, but as a possibility. In my mind, to think that the entire universe is somehow dependent on what is happening on this incredibly small speck of dust leads one towards the delusion that human beings matter in the grand scheme of things. It would lead one to the idea that whatever is controlling the universe cares about the life on this planet as if a creator created the universe with the planet being the center of it. It is when I investigate the night sky that I cannot give that idea any credence. The universe and all its vastness, much of which is still not understood by our minds, is far too large to be designed with the well-being of this planet and its inhabitants at its core. Chapter 1. Language. Before we can dive into the ideas of the meaning of life, we must first start at the very beginning. No, I'm not talking about time itself, but the vehicle that we use to transfer our ideas to one another. This vehicle of language. Language is the medium in which we transfer our ideas. It is how we communicate with each other in the past, present, and future. Yes, language can transpose time. Language is incredibly complex, and we take it for granted because we use it so often and effortlessly. It allows us to have a shared sense of meaning. It allows us to interact and bond with others. Language is fluid and develops through culture, knowledge, and social norms of a specific given time period. Language is not a static concept, and because of this, it presents problems. Language survives time because it can adapt and change with our advancement as human beings. New words are created. Old words are repurposed or redefined. Definitions of words become more concise. Language may have a static set of rules, but meaning and definitions continuously change. Let us take the word girl for example. The origination of the word is still unknown, but it first began popping up in the 13th century. It referred to young children in general. Gay girls referred to young women, while naive girls referred to young men. The word naughty meant you had nothing. It has since evolved from meaning evil or immoral to badly behaved. The word guy originated from the man that bombed Parliament in 1605, Guy Fawkes. Guy originally referred to a frightful figure and now has since been used to refer to a man in general. Slang is another example of how language tends to transform over time or within certain social or cultural groups. Slang is incredibly hard for non-native speakers to understand since it is defined as a type of language that consists of words and phrases that are regarded as very informal, are more common in speech than writing, and are typically restricted to a particular context or group of people. The word DAP is an acronym for Dead Ass Perfect and was used in the 1950s to signify that you really enjoyed something. The phrase "know your onions" was used in the 1920s as to know what is going on. The cat's pajamas is also from the 1920s and meant that something was truly excellent or as good as it gets. A wig chop was a haircut. A daddy-o was a cool person. To tell somebody was Gentius was to let them know that you admired their appearance or personality. A passion pit was a drive-in. Raz my berries meant something excited you. A wet rag referred to someone as no fun. We also have words that were once everyday language and are now rarely used at all. Some of them have either lost their meaning or they've just fallen out of use. A fright means to frighten someone. A patency is a longing or desire. A say is an attempt or to analyze for one or more specific components. Of want means to go away. Bus means to kiss. A bruit is a report or rumor. There are hundreds of words that fall into this category. These words are not just random words in the dictionary that we would only use on rare occasions when explaining something incredibly concise. No, these words were once common and heard from anyone's mouth during a specific time period. All the examples above demonstrate the fluidity of language. This poses certain problems when it comes to analyzing language from the past. Our concept of language today does not directly translate to the language of yesterday. Many of the concepts we have come to grasp may not be how they had always been interpretive. An obvious example of this is slavery. Slavery was once an institutionalized practice in which human beings were defined as property of another. They had no humanness assigned to them. They were the same property as one's own shoe. With the backing of many of the major religious ideologies, slavery became institutionalized and normalized within society. Some religious thinkers thought that slavery was just a problem of the fallen state of man. It was the conceptualization of sin, a sin that would forever be present. It was just how business was done. When we talk about slavery today, we no longer endorse it in the sense of human beings as property. We now see all humans as equals and deserving of inalienable rights, no matter how advanced their society has become. It is hard for us to understand how slavery was such a widespread practice because how we view the concept today. This concept influenced the social norms of society and a lot of the intellectual thought of that time. When we began to question slavery as a moral action, we began to redefine the meaning and concept in practice. After decades, we acknowledged that no matter what color one is, they're still human beings, and human beings shouldn't be kept as property. And that the system of slavery was exploitative and immoral. Having this hindsight now, we look back and can't fathom how people existed in a society structured around slavery. This thinking that ideas from the past can be brought to the future without any reinterpretation or reconceptualization is rampant. We can see this constantly being debated in American politics. Conservatism seeks to keep tradition and to progress at an incredibly slow and safe pace. With the rise of Donald Trump, we can see this nostalgia raised in his campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again." Loads of American citizens long to go back to when America was a dominating global power, not saying we aren't now, and a return to traditional values that cultivated the success of the United States enjoyed in the past. Whether or not the statement is true, this is what they long for. Constitutionalists believe that the Founding Fathers were infallible and created the perfect document that could withstand the test of time. They feel that everything mentioned in the Constitution will always be applicable no matter the direction a society goes. This, however, is problematic because of the amount of amendments we've experienced so far. Basic things like the equality of women and people from African descent had to be fixed. We are still fighting to get the entirety of the LGBTQ+ community under the same protection as any other American citizen.